Hey everyone, welcome back to Whisperer. I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we've got a brand new story, one I found on Reddit. It's strange, emotional, and deeply unsettling. Let's begin. Mrs. Carrington lost her smile. Just like all the other teachers who taught us, I was wondering when she was going to snap too. Mr. Garrett ran out screaming, Mrs. Pepper was caught trying to poison us, and Mr. Johnstone named us in his death letter. He didn't die, but he did intentionally jump down the stairs. We were ruthless. Well, my class was. I didn't speak much, but if the class were laughing, I was too. If I didn't laugh, they looked at me like I was stupid. I don't know why our prime goal was to get rid of our teachers. Mrs. Carrington was nice. I liked her sunshine smile and pretty dresses, but the other kids wanted to get their claws into her. Serena Ackerman insisted she had seen Mrs. Carrington casting a spell. Her proof was, Mrs. Carrington looked like really weird when she was talking to a third grader. She had her eyes closed. I was sure Mrs. Carrington was just mid-sneeze, but I was told to shut up. So, my class started to call her a witch, throwing things at her face, refusing to work, and even reporting that she had hit them. Mrs. Carrington's sunshine smile started to darken. I tallied in my notebook how many times her voice broke, her hands tightening into fists when Rowan asked if she brushed her hair, and then if she had a boyfriend. The boys at the back used her as target practice, throwing screwed-up pieces of paper in her face, then pens and pencils, and even a bottle of water, which almost bruised her face. I watched the light start to dim in her eyes. That excited gleam ready to teach us faded completely. Mrs. Carrington came to class looking like she had been crying. She kept tissues in her pocket to swipe at her eyes when Jack flung his workbook at her and started to teach us with her back turned so she wasn't hit in the face with flying pencils. After days and then weeks of waiting for Mrs. Carrington to give up, our teacher lost her mind on a random Tuesday when it was raining. She was writing a poem when Summer Carlyle stood up. Summer bullied me for weeks because I didn't get skincare products for Christmas. There was a princess-themed face mousse that all the kids were talking about, and even I really wanted it. I asked Mom if we could go to Sephora to look at the makeup, but when I made a beeline for the skincare section, Mom's smile started to twist. I did ask for the face mousse, but Mom laughed at me. For what skin? Ruby, you are 9 years old. Mom picked up the product. Do you even understand what this is for? I was half aware of Summer Carlyle a few meters away. The girl had eagle eyes, and I knew she'd noticed me. No, I mumbled. It's for facial wrinkles. Mom laughed. She cupped my face, her smile making my tummy twist. Ruby, it's a de-aging serum. Do you want to look younger? I blinked. But all the other kids want to look younger, she teased. I thought you wanted to look like a grown-up. I did. Summer said I always looked like a baby. Mom placed the mouse back on the shelf and instead pulled me into the makeup section. She bought me eyeshadow, and when I pressured her because Summer was definitely spying on me, she even bought me that other stuff that's like paste or something. The grown-up orange stuff adults put on their face. Summer had bought 3 bottles of the mousse and made sure to show it to everyone else. If you didn't have it, then you weren't considered cool. I showed her my grown-up makeup, and Summer turned up her nose and said, Well, my Grammy wears that stuff, Ruby, so that means you wear old people's makeup. That day, Summer Carlyle was determined to make our teacher cry. Mrs. Carrington, Summer mocked, leaning forward in her desk. How old are you again? Our teacher's lip pricked. I am 31, Summer. Ew. Summer pulled a face. Isn't 30 like super old? That's young, Mrs. Carrington said in a sigh. I don't think you kids understand aging very well. What's that supposed to mean? Summer snapped. Aging is beautiful, Mrs. Carrington said. I lost my mother when I was very young, and I would give anything to see her wrinkles. Age gracefully, and you will be proud of your wrinkled skin. Be thankful you got to live all those years. Summer giggled. Did your mommy look like a grandma too? I caught the exact moment our teacher started to crack. She paused, writing for a moment, her fingers tightening around the pen. Summer Carlyle, her voice shook slightly. If you do not stop being rude, I will be calling your mother. 30 is old and disgusting, Rowan Adams spoke up with a snort. When I twisted around, the boy was practically vibrating on his chair, itching for an argument. His eyes were narrowed, lips quirking into a smirk. I can see your ugly wrinkles, Mrs. Carrington. Mrs. Carrington stopped writing when the class erupted into laughter. She turned around, and I saw her mouth finally curl into a smile. I missed her smile. I was used to her forced grins after definitely crying in the bathroom. But this one looked genuine. Straightening in my seat, I scribbled out my latest tally. Maybe she wasn't going to leave after all. Mrs. Carrington's lips split into one of her old smiles, her eyes shining. I have an idea. Why don't we play Simon Says? She stepped forward, her dark eyes drinking all of us in. I felt the air around me still, and my pencil slipped out of my grasp. Mrs. Carrington's voice was suddenly in my head, cracking through my skull and stirring my brain into soup. It was so loud, loud enough to elicit a screech in the back of my throat. Simon Says, clap your hands, she told us. We did. My body moved without me, my hands coming together to clap loudly. Mrs. Carrington nodded with a smile. Very good. Simon Says, jump up and down. It hurt. The feeling of my body being forced upwards, ripped from my seat. I jumped 3 times, a symphony of feet hitting the floor. Simon Says, sit down. I slumped back into my seat, tears filling my eyes, but I couldn't blink them away. Mrs. Carrington folded her arms, her eyes glittering. Simon Says, stop. We did stop. I stopped. I could feel the breath in my lungs. I was still breathing, still alive, still conscious and looking at my teacher, but I had stopped. I thought it was a joke. But Mrs. Carrington didn't say, Simon Says go. I waited for her to, choking on that last lingering frozen breath. But she didn't end the game. I stopped for hours. The room darkened, and I was aware of every second, every painful minute. I counted minutes, and then hours until I lost count. Days passed. I felt every single one. Tuesday ended and became Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday. The weekend came, and I was sure the game would end. But then another Monday came, another Tuesday, and I was disassociating, slamming my fists into a barrier inside my mind. I couldn't move. I couldn't move my body. I was still sitting, still staring at the whiteboard with the exact expression. Wednesday, and I held on to every agonizing second. Simon Says, go. I manifested the words, trying to move my frozen lips. Simon Says, go. Simon Says, go. Soon enough, weeks started feeling like years. Monday became Wednesday, and then 2017. Sunday felt like a Friday, and Saturday was the entirety of 2018. My favorite thing was watching the seasons change in the corner of my eye. It was my only way of knowing the world was still going without me, while I was stopped. Years went by, felt like centuries, and I was still playing Simon Says. I was always there, always glued to my seat inside my 3rd grade classroom. I counted every ceiling tile, every poster on the wall, every fragment of light. Rain hit the windows. The sun baked into the back of my neck. Wind sent prickles down my spine. I was aware of my hair growing out, long, and then short, and then in a ponytail, like an invisible me was continuing on. While I had stopped, I grew taller, and my face started to change. I sensed my body twist and contort, like I was being stretched. Pain came in waves, striking up and down my legs, and then a different pain in my stomach. This one made me want to die. I couldn't stop it, couldn't control this monster that slammed into me every Wednesday, July 2019. I felt emotions, new ones I didn't understand. I felt anger and frustration, pain and sadness, longing, butterflies in my chest and stomach that didn't leave. But then came warmth, a blossoming in my heart that felt like warm water coming over me. Heartbreak felt like suffocating. Feelings were windows into my life. I was discovering love, falling in love, and then out of love. But it wasn't fair that I didn't get to see it. I just felt it. Love didn't make sense to me, though. Boys and girls were gross. When I stopped counting Wednesdays and Julys and 2018s, my focus went to our frozen classroom. I could see the other kids, but I was sure they had been replaced. Summer didn't look like a 9-year-old anymore. Her face was all blotchy. Rowan looked like my older brother, his head almost hitting the ceiling. I can't remember when I stopped screaming, stopped hammering on the barrier inside my mind, begging to die, to be released from Simon Says. I think I stopped myself. My teacher had stopped me physically, and I chose to sleep. I didn't want to count Saturday Mondays anymore. I didn't want to think. So, I decided to go to sleep. Mrs. Carrington's voice did finally hit us. Several thousand Saturday Thursdays later, the game ended. Like a wave of ice water coming over me. My breath resumed. Simon Says, go asterisk. Blinking rapidly, my consciousness caught up to my body. My senses were back. Taste, gum, bubble gum flavored, smell, perfume. My vision was foggy before clarity took over. No longer in my third-grade classroom, I was standing on a stage, a graduation gown pooling on the floor below me. I was wearing a pretty dress that shouldn't have fit me, that was supposed to be an adult dress. The people next to me were strangers. They were scary high schoolers. So why was I standing with them? I felt my legs give way, only to catch myself, my cry catching in my throat. The room was filled with people, all of them smiling, mid-applause. In my hand was a rolled-up piece of paper. The banner stuck to the wall caught my attention. Asterisk. Congratulations to our class of 2023. 2023. No, it was 2016. I only felt 2018, 2019, and the one after that. How could it be 2023? 2023 was too big of a number. I was 9 years old. I was in the third grade. I could see my mom in the audience, her smile wide. I didn't remember Mommy having wrinkles. The last time I saw her, my mommy still had a pretty face. She was young. Now, I could see visible lines in her face. Her hair was thinner, tied into a ponytail, not her usual pretty curls. Something slimy filled the back of my throat. The grown-ups next to me were not strangers. They were my classmates. When the crowd stopped clapping, my class seemed to snap out of it, each of them being released from Simon Says. Rowan Adams, who was standing next to me, blinked, his eyes widening. His diploma slipped from his grasp. His gaze was suddenly unseeing. Frenzied. What? His voice was too low, like an adult. What's happening? Summer Carlyle started screaming, her agonizing cry rattling in my skull. She scratched at her face with her manicure, harsh enough to draw blood, pieces of flesh stuck between scarlet nails. Jack stumbled backwards, falling over himself. The terror that held me to the spot, paralyzed, snapped me out of it when Olivia Lewis made a choking noise. She was trembling, her eyes rolling into the back of her head. Something slipped from her mouth, a red bulging mound. It was her tongue. I had never seen so much blood seeping down her chin. The audience started to murmur when she giggled, spluttering, pooling red. Mommy. I could hear the word in heavy pants and sharp hisses. Summer was squealing, trying to rip out her hair. Rowan regarded the crowd with a cocked head. Where's my mommy? He whispered. For a moment, it was silent, apart from several adults trying to calm Summer down. I could hear my classmates' breaths shuddering, labored with sobs. Then the screams started. Kids throwing themselves off of stage, abandoning graduation gowns, caught in hysterics. In the reflection of someone's phone, I could see myself. An adult. I was taller, my hair hanging loose on my shoulders. But all of those years that led to that moment, my preteen and teenage years, gone. I dropped my diploma, trying to walk. But my body felt wrong. It was too big, too heavy. My voice was still small, still mine. But my body, my mind, my thoughts were all older. I pulled off my graduation cap, my eyes filling with tears. I found my mommy in the crowd, wrapping my arms around her. She held on to me, her gaze on the screaming masses of kids giving their parents attack hugs. I was shaking, clinging onto my mom to make sure she was real. She was. Mom smelled exactly the same, but when I pulled away, her face was all wrinkly. Summer Carlyle had made me all too aware of a woman's wrinkles. Mom had them on her mouth and folded in her cheek. I couldn't stop myself from poking them, words choking my mouth. She wasn't supposed to be this old. Why did my mom look this old? Mommy, I whispered, choking back sobs. I'm old. Mom was shaken by what was going around us, tightening her grip around me. Ruby, is there something wrong? Mrs. Carrington, I started to say. Behind me, Summer Carlyle was screeching, her eyes wild, like an animal. Simon says, stop. Mrs. Carrington's voice crept into our minds, freezing us in place once again. Have you learned your lesson? Yes, I thought dizzily. I sensed that exact word reverberating through us. Yes, yes. Very well, she hummed. Misbehave again, and I will make you regret you were born. You never, and I mean ever, ask a woman her age. She let us go, and I remember slipping to my knees, my fingernails digging into my own face. The world didn't feel real. I had to cling onto the floor to make sure I wasn't still stuck to my seat, trapped inside my third-grade classroom. Mom's murmurs were in my ears, but I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was Mrs. Carrington. Simon says, go. Since graduating, I've been to 3 different therapists. I bit all of them. They were stupid. They don't believe me about Mrs. Carrington, and they treat me like a grown-up. According to them, I'm suffering from stress. I told them everything, all of the days and weeks and months I lived through, all of the years I spent counting floor tiles, frozen, screaming. They showed me footage of those years. They showed me turning 10, and then 12, and entering teenagehood, except I don't remember them. That girl was not me. She was a shell with my face. While I suffered, I've tried to contact the other kids. Summer is in the psych ward, and Rowan tried to kill himself. Jack actually went to college, and Serena has an actual job. I don't know if she knows what she's doing, but she's still doing it. I don't blame Rowan trying to end it. I want to die too. I have a decade worth of intelligence that hurts my head. I know math equations, but I don't know how. I can write and spell, but I don't remember learning. I'm so scared of Mrs. Carrington, continuing, Simon says. Sometimes she forces us to play, but it's only for a night or a few hours. I wake up with filthy hands in the middle of town or in a stranger's house. 2 weeks ago, I found myself in someone's pool. Then I was in a tunnel in the center of town. I found cash in my backpack last night. Almost $2,000. There are big bags of white powder too, but I don't know what that is. Rowan texted me to meet him. He thinks Mrs. Carrington is using us. But what for? Simon says doesn't last for too long, and I'm too scared to disobey her. What if she stops me again? I think Rowan's being a stupid head, but I do want to talk to another classmate. I met him last night under the town bridge. He has bags of white powder too. We threw them in the lake. Then we went to the park to play. I stood in front of the mirror last night, prodding my 18-year-old face. I have one tiny wrinkle below my lip, which means I'm getting old. And I didn't even earn it.